Oops. Okay. Hi, how are you? This afternoon is Office Hours with Stitchcraft Marketing. My name is Laura Cameron. I'm the Director of Operations here at Stitchcraft Marketing. I'm joined by my colleagues, Flossie and Rebecca. And today we're going to talk about expanding your impact with content atomization. So this is based on an article that we published on our blog, I believe last week. It's called Expanding Your Impact with Content Atomization. You can find it at the link below. I will also paste the link in chat. And if you are watching later on YouTube, the link will be in the description box down below. So the first thing we want to talk about is, what is content atomization? Content atomization is taking a large piece of content and breaking it down into smaller pieces. That is, if you have a big article that you're writing, you could actually break it into a series of articles. This allows you to be more focused and concentrated on each piece of content that you are creating so that you can get down sort of into the details and expand on what you're talking about rather than talking about it on a real surface level. Content atomization isn't repurposing your content. It is taking a piece of content and just breaking it into smaller components. So you're not just reposting content you've already done, you are actually creating a new piece. You're just creating more pieces so that you can, for instance, post it in a series of blog posts or a series of emails or share it in a series of videos, which gives your customers or your followers more touch points, more time to interface with you. And it also allows you to sort of develop a little bit of subject matter expertise and kind of position yourself as having a wide variety of articles on a certain topic. So why would you atomize your content? I've already given you a few of those. You create more content to drive customers to your platforms. If you are creating blog content or videos that are driving them back to your website, if you break it into three pieces, that's three times that you're touching your customer and asking them to come back and look at your website. It also creates more inbound links from various sources to your content. You could be creating multiple pins on Pinterest, multiple social media posts. You just have a lot of touch points with your customers. You also become a thought leader with lots of content around a central theme. Like I said, you are sharing the breadth and depth of your expertise on your topic, and you're creating multiple items of content, multiple pieces of content that talk about that. That's going to right away position you as more of an expert and having a wide variety of options to offer. More content around a keyword-rich theme means you're going to get higher SEO scores. Basically, the more times your website hits for those key-rich words, and you're going to have them in multiple posts, the better a candidate your website seems for driving people when they are searching. That's going to improve your search engine optimization rankings, and it's going to potentially show you more frequently in results as customers are searching for your keyword terms. Finally, you can repurpose small pieces via different media. Yes, I misspoke in that one, but you can use content across a variety of platforms, and that just sort of multiplies your reach in terms of the content that you are creating. So how do you get started? The first thing you want to do is you want to brainstorm some broad themes. These should be things that you are an expert on, that you have knowledge to offer and information to share. Don't pick things that you don't know very much about. This is really, you're gonna develop your domain expertise here and try and share your knowledge. Next, you're going to consider your customers' pain points. What are their hopes and dreams? What are their aspirations? What do they have trouble with? How does your product or service or the information you're going to share solve a problem that they are having? Next, look at your existing content. What could you expand on or add pieces to? If you have touched a topic on a sort of very surface high level, could you develop more smaller pieces of content that would dig into specific points in your previous piece? Because then you could link them all together and they would still be multiple pieces that function under a broad theme. Next, like I said, you want to backlink your pieces of atomized content so they connect together. So if you are writing a series of blog posts, you want to be sure that in each blog post, so basically if you write a series of 4 blog posts, you want to be sure that 2 or that post 1 links to post 2. You want to be sure that post 2 links back to post 1, and when you produce post 3, it links forward to post 3. And that can look like, refresh yourself on what we discussed last week, or some kind of link like that, or check out the next step in the process. I think of them as little arrows at the bottom of the page, almost referring traffic back or forward. You may also end up finding that if you have if you want to develop some kind of a landing page for specific topics, you could just have a table of contents or sort of an index of the different kinds of articles you offer. It could be as simple as organizing around keywords or topics. So let's talk about some examples and how you can apply this in your situation. What we have done is we have taken knitting and we have taken a common problem element for a lot of knitters, which is gauge. Gauge, for those who are not in the knitting world, is a relation of how many stitches and how many rows you get to certain inches. So basically, what is the fabric like that you are creating, and how does a small piece of fabric that we call a swatch translate to a larger garment? How can you extrapolate from that what the measurements of the garment are going to be? Differences in gauge are actually very important in certain things. For instance, if you are knitting at a teeny tiny gauge and you are trying to knit a sweater and your gauge is off, your sweater may be entirely too tight. Conversely, if you are getting too many stitches or not enough stitches per inch, your gauge may be too large and you may actually end up with a sweater that is 3 sizes too big. So gauge is kind of a fundamental concept. So for your written content, what might you do? You might produce a series of blog posts. And in those blog posts, you might define what is gauge. You might talk about methods for achieving gauge. You might talk about methods for accurately measuring your gauge. How, like when you knit a sample, do you wash it? Do you block it? How do you use the ruler to measure it? Do you stretch it and pin it out? Or do you let it lie as it is? You might talk about what to do when you can't get gauge. What are your choices then? Do you choose a different yarn? Do you choose a different pattern? Do you adapt the math of your current pattern to the gauge that you're getting? What are the most common gauge mistakes? How to determine what needle size you should move to if you're not on gauge. Should you move to a smaller needle or a larger needle? Those kinds of things. The most commonly asked questions about gauge. What are questions that you get asked from your customers about this topic all the time? That could be a great frequently asked questions post or just a part of your content atomization. You could also develop this into a weekly newsletter series. You could, for the month of January, go back to basics and focus on gauge and deliver your content in a series of newsletters that will allow your newsletter subscribers to learn a new technique or learn more about a topic. You could also discuss what you're doing in those and refer it back to blog posts that you already have, which will encourage them to explore your website. Or if you have a video of what you're doing, and we'll get to video on the next page, you could also direct your newsletter subscribers to watch the video. So more examples, same theme. What are you going to do with your media? You might come up with a YouTube video. For instance, show how you accurately measure gauge so that everyone knows exactly how you hold the ruler, whether you stretch it, whether you don't, those kinds of things. Examples of too tight and too loose gauge swatches. A lot of times you can tell by looking at the fabric. If it's too loose, you can see daylight through your swatch, or you might see whatever is in the background. If it's too tight, it might be really kind of puckered, or it might not lay flat because it's so tight. You could do a podcast. If you have a podcast, you could explore a guest's method and tips for achieving gauge. If you know someone who is a professional knitter, maybe they want to talk about how they achieve gauge and what they do to what their process is for developing a gauge swatch and making adjustments as needed. You could talk about gauge horror stories or gauge success stories. The success story is you end up with a beautifully fitting garment. The horror story is you end up with something that's teeny tiny or incredibly huge and it does not fit. So these are some of the other things you might want to do for your social media content. You could pull Instagram stories either from still photos or from your videos. You could talk about, you could do a live video washing and preparing a gauge swatch, a live video measuring a gauge swatch. You could do a poll. Do you make a gauge swatch? A lot of knitters do not, and it does lead to some problems. You could do a live retelling of your worst gauge experience, and if you still have the project, bring it along to show. You could do a live retelling of your best gauge experience. Instagram Reels, you could do graphics summarizing points in your individual blog posts. Again, you can link together static images, and our tutorial on that was last month. If you'd like to go through and use a service like Capwing to put together some reels, or you could, again, make your reel part of like some of your live videos. You could design some infographics. You could produce a gauge tips cheat sheet. So your best tips all in one small sheet that someone can take and download. You could put together your most common gauge FAQs, and you could put together your most common gauge mistakes. So this is a wide variety of topics you could cover about gauge, all falling under that theme, but it creates material for tons of different social media content, posts, videos, etc. So that is content atomization, sort of in a nutshell. If you would like to brainstorm some topics or consult us, we are available. You're welcome to email us. We can do a free session discussing with you how you might add content atomization to your social media repertoire. And if you have any questions, you are always welcome to email us. I am Laura@stitchcraftmarketing.com. And our next session is going to be held in the new year. It is on January 18th. And we are going to talk about how to take a negative customer review and turn it into a positive customer experience. So thanks for joining us, and have happy holidays and a wonderful new year. We hope to see you then. Thanks a lot.